awesome.
Got to hydrate, otherwise one of us may fall over here.
It's hot out there, huh?
Yeah. All right, well, let's start out with intros. Andy, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll hop right into the content.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to Brand Innovators. And actually, first of all, let's give her congratulations. If you don't know, getting to ambassador means you stay in our hotels more than 100 nights a year and spend north of $23,000. So that's a big deal. So congrats on that. Well, hopefully we're taking great care of you. If not, I know a few people. Good morning. My name's Andy Kauffman. I am the Chief Commercial Officer for the U.S. and Canada for Marriott International. If you're not familiar with us, we're close to 10,000 hotels around the world, the world's largest hospitality company with more than 240 million members across our Marriott Bonvoy platform and 35 plus brands. And we'll get into all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Great to have you here, Andy. Dan Ackerman at the Trade Desk, the world's largest independent digital media buying platform. Couple things. First off, I don't know about how many people in the crowd. When I was 16, I was not asking thoughtful business questions, and here at Cannes.
No, congrats. That was amazing.
That was really incredible. You're going places. Yeah, and also just.
I think we're going to all work for you soon.
Yes. Yeah. Sign me up. And just to the last panel, what incredible storytelling and an amazing community. Andy, I just wanted to start out by saying two things. Wanted to share my admiration and appreciation. One, the way you lead and the way that you challenge the status quo and innovate in every stop along the way is awesome. So I admire that a lot.
Thank you.
And I also appreciate. Ever since I met you a few years ago at a conference, just the honesty, the authenticity, and the generosity of time for advice and really leaning into the community. So it's great.
Well, it's my pleasure. For those that don't know, Dan and I have probably 6-7 years now, and we see each other at conferences. I think we shared the stage once or twice before too. And so it's really a great, we see the world similarly. So for me, this is just going to be a fun conversation. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, let's start out. You've had, over the last 10 years, pretty incredible experience, but you boomeranged back to Marriott. So I'd love to just start out with a little bit of that journey, going to the NFL and then returning back.
Yeah. I spent 25 years in the travel industry. I started my career with the Walt Disney Company and their parks division and ran digital for the parks in the early days of digital. And then I moved over to Expedia and then 11 years at Marriott. And then the pandemic hits. And, I helped rebuild the company after we went through that awful time. And I remember my wife saying to me, so you've spent all your energy, you're in that, home office 18 hours a day, it felt like, and what do you want to do? Like, what's next for you? And what I realized then is that my whole career had been defined as a travel person. I had this through line that was travel. And what I also realized is that in the third chapter of my career, I want to do two things. I want to teach and I want to sit on a few boards. And if you think about what makes people attractive to that, it's diversification, it's diverse industry experience, and it's expertise, that depth, but gets applied to different industry models. So I started to say, maybe I should think outside of travel. So I actually mapped all out. I'm like, I'm going to go here. What do we know in travel that other industries didn't? Product and data and personalization and digital and the sort of the core of platform businesses. So I'd spec'd out all these industries, and sports was one of them. And I'd love to say that then I started to pursue it and everything, but the reality is a recruiter called, and I was like, I got a job at the NFL, and I think you'd be great for it. And I was like, that's really interesting. But when I went to my first interview, they pitched the job as this, and I said, with all due respect, and my boss, Tim Ellis, who's a brilliant CMO, I said, with all due respect, Tim, I actually think this is the job. And I said, because in travel, we think about it this way. And it's a platform business, and you have a membership base, and you have franchisees, and you have multi-channel orchestration, and you really should have personalization at the core that drives impact to drive up your customer lifetime value. By the way, that's not a travel model. That's any platform business, and the NFL is a platform business. The difference was they had a football operations platform, and I went there to build their fan engagement platform. And now they're killing it. So now fast forward, it's been 4 years there. So why did I boomerang back? When you have travel in your blood, it never really goes away. And And so I had this incredible opportunity to come back, but not just come back to a company and industry I love, but for this role. And what I love about this role specifically is I run the commercial business for the US and Canada. It's our biggest region around the world. And what we've designed into the model while it's chief commercial officer is because historically marketing and sales and pricing and product had run as silos in the company. And I look around the room, I see some nodding. I suspect other businesses are built this way. And when you think about a performance marketer, we're designed at our core to drive the business. And so there is no lines between sales and digital and marketing and performance. It's just a commercial engine. And so my belief is that there won't be a CMO in 5 years. That actually marketing is going to be, yeah, that's the hot take, that marketing will be part of a commercial organization, and that the whole flywheel effect will drive growth and commercial. And so I think you'll see titles like Chief Growth Officer, which is emerging, Chief Commercial Officer, which is clearly emerging, and the CMO and Sales Revenue Officers and all will all converge into that.
Yeah, I mean, we're absolutely seeing the CFO office and the CMO office just come together. They have a P&L, they have investors, they have margin and EBITDA deliver, and it's an investment in growth and smart organization. So it was good to get that out of the gates and start with that. In the 4 years in between your stints at Marriott, I imagine a lot has changed. Certainly the disruption from the pandemic, but just consumer behavior. There used to be a relatively linear path to purchase. Moment of inspiration to a booking. How has that changed, and how in this role are you guiding the organization to think differently about that?
Yeah, well, the travel journey is a wildly it's not even a linear, it's like a web now. Many people, and I look around the room, I suspect you're probably doing this, are planning multiple trips at one time. You may be planning multiple business trips while you're planning a larger leisure trip with your family, while you may be planning a couple's weekend away. So one, there's that. Two, and I think the industry has long, and probably a lot of industries are this way, have long wanted to define individuals as that's your profile. And you are that person. And so I have a digital footprint, a digital identity, and all these behaviors that create that unified you. But the reality is, whether you call it modes or personalities or what, your travel needs change based off of who you're traveling with and the reason for that trip. I stay in all of our brands. Sometimes I'm traveling with my wife and we stay in certain luxury brands or you're in Westin or some other of our fantastic brands. When we travel with our kids, it looks different. When you're traveling with a youth sports organization, that looks different when you're doing an annual vacation. And so your needs change, but the individual is the same. And so we've evolved how we think about that quite substantially, and it's changing how we go to market.
You told me a very funny story in our prep. If you're okay sharing it,
sure.
I just thought it was a great example that you could never plan for with the trip to California.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, a little off script, but it's so good.
So I have a college-age daughter and a son who is he's a rising senior in high school. So we're in the midst of the college planning process. It's tough, by the way. It's a hard
I feel your
process. Pain. And it's expensive too. You hire these college coaches and everything, but it's the whole different conversation. Sorry. So we're looking at a few schools in the Los Angeles area, and we were looking at hotels. And I had certain needs and places that I typically stay at when I go to this city for business. And my wife's like, no, let's tone that down just a little bit, not make the trip too extravagant. We live in the East Coast, so it's very far if my son goes to school in California. And we certainly want to encourage him to follow his dreams and do everything. But she's like, make it just a little uncomfortable, just a little bit. Don't make it too fabulous.
It resonated with me so much, so I appreciate that. Also, in the past 4 years, the portfolio has changed a lot. I mean, it's very different. It is not just your standard hotel. It's expanded a lot. How is that changing the way you and the team think about audiences, about curating that discovery and booking process, and how you operate differently?
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna answer that, but I'm gonna bridge it back to a little bit of the change in consumer behavior. Because at the end of the day, when you have 240 million members, when you have a depth, when you have people staying more than 100 nights, you know a lot about them. And let's be honest, we're in a very intimate business. People sleep with us. We know a lot about them, and we have to be responsible in what we know and what we use as well. But because of that, we not only see the trends happening with us, but clearly, just like any business, we're looking externally on what's happening in broader culture, how are consumer needs changing, and the like. And a few things that we look at on the sort of hotel portfolio side of the business. One, post-pandemic, and this a lot want to focus on the younger generation, but this spans all generations. Post-pandemic, people are disproportionately valuing experiences over material goods. They will sacrifice, and again, it's great to see the nodding. You will sacrifice buying that. I don't want to insult any brand, so that good, but you will not sacrifice that travel experience. In fact, many are dialing up that travel experience. And so when we look at our portfolio, what we realize is we still have opportunities. So in the US, I'll give you some examples. Spending times in the outdoors has accelerated post-pandemic. We haven't historically had the greatest depth of hotels around national parks and other mountain resorts and the like. So we acquired a brand called Postcard Cabins. Think tiny homes around national parks and in nature. All underneath the Marriott Bonvoy umbrella. We bought another brand called Trailborn Hotels, which are local rustic experiences in and around nature places. The other end of the spectrum, we have an incredible luxury brand, one of the best in the world in St. Regis, and then we have another in Ritz-Carlton. Ritz-Carlton, we had realized, I'm looking around and seeing these yachts. We said the ultra high net worth really want a different experience than just hotels. So we've launched 2 Ritz-Carlton yachts. We're launching our 3rd. She'll be in the water this summer. And it's an off the charts experience, just incredible. But again, meeting the need of the changing traveler as we evolve.
Yeah, one of the things that you talked about during our prep was shifting away from individual brand marketing and zooming out and looking at the objective of the consumer. And it's something we talk a lot about in digital planning, in media activation, is getting really crisp on what's the objective. But your angle was, let's understand the objective of the consumer and start to market to them in that way. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, that's what happens when you sit on a lot of data and insights. You start to see, well, first of all, if someone is a customer of one brand, they're not actually as valuable as when they stay in multiple brands. So their value to us goes up. So it's good for the business. But then let's not be tone deaf and market a brand when a customer doesn't want it or doesn't need it. So let's flip the model. Back to what I was saying, you're not a homogenous profile anymore, but your needs change, and we don't have to guess in most cases. So let's shift the model to a more audience-based or demand-based need, and then match your needs with the products and brands that we have. Now, to do that, it's interesting because often I'll get asked, are you doing a brand or a portfolio strategy here? And the reality is you're doing both. Because for the portfolio, and the portfolio being Marriott Bonvoy, to be attractive, you need to have strong brands within it. Some of those brands will break through and actually become a lead to resonate with people. Others get marketed within and alongside other brands. But if you flip the model, if you have strong brands, if they resonate, if they're meaningful and they deliver good experiences, then you can sort of bring the two together, start with the demand and then match with the brand that makes sense for them.
That's a big cultural change, though. I mean, especially if people grew up there marketing, Courtyard or St. Regis, to then reshape the thinking about, customer first, that objective. What was the organizational friction? You've only been back for a short time, and the journey may not be over. But like, what are some of the fundamentals for folks, C-suite down to the brand marketers, and helping bring them along?
I think friction's a good word, and that speaks to structure, that speaks to strategy, that speaks to how you spend money. In a business where your marketing tends to come back in fees after your marketing budgets come back in fees after you sell hotel rooms, which is essentially how our business works. It's logical that your brands with the biggest budgets will be your biggest brands with the biggest footprint. But that may not always be how you want to strategically go to market or make your investments. So I say often we can't go to market like our org chart. Prior to me leaving, we often did. And we had started this journey, I'm talking about pre-pandemic, but then pandemic disrupted it. Now, we've changed a lot. We've changed the organization. We've changed a bit of how we fund. But at the end of the day, we start with strategy and customers, not with how we're organized. And that should drive how you go to market. And, a lot of companies don't do that.
Yeah. In parallel to the strategy, the media component, anything to talk about around storytelling, like just reshaping how you start the inspiration and the storytelling when you're looking at that fragmented, journey?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, one, you have to have strong brands and they have to mean something. And if there's one thing I learned from leaving the travel business and going to the NFL and coming back, it is how to now generate creative that makes you feel something. I worked on some of the greatest just assets. I learned from a master. I believe Tim has 3 of the top 10 Super Bowl ads of all time credited to him. When you work alongside a legend, you watch a lot and you learn a lot. And he not only taught me how to push on what great creative is, but push the team to make us uncomfortable. And so when I came back and I started, I actually, my first meeting with my marketing team, we sat down and I said, you're all doing great work. The company has done well. I just want you to get a little glimpse into how I think. And so I walked them through some tenets and how I think about creative. And I said, if you're not making us uncomfortable as a company, I don't know who's going to. Because the marketing team should be on the bleeding edge and pushing us and taking chances and risks and the like. The second is, how many people in this room or any of you, when you're writing a brief, the brief says, what do you want the customer to do? What's the business outcome? What's the KPI? Do you ever ask what you want them to feel? No. And the room was like, no, we don't. And I said, so I'm going to show you actually something that we did over the course of 3-4 different seasons of the NFL. Every season we would have a kickoff spot. And that kickoff spot set the tone for the season-long theme. Many brands do this, right? It becomes your annual theme. The brief was the same every year. Literally the same. What changed was because I had my insights team, we used the insights, which was an outside-in view on what was the tone of America. What were they exhausted after the pandemic and they just needed an escape? And can football bring you together? Was it a time to use humor? Are they anxious? And so if you go back, and actually you can do this on YouTube, if you go back and look at the NFL kickoff spots of the last 3 seasons, same brief, but the tone of the country drove very, very different creative. And when I showed them that, they I saw all these light bulbs go off on this whole new level of storytelling. So we're gonna push the envelope and really, really deliver creative that makes people feel.
It's such an important point. And it strikes a chord with me because my wife and my daughters give me so much shit. Because when I see that, and you've had, this stretch from the NBA finals until preseason football, I just feel lost. And
Totally
it's
lost.
this moment
Yeah.
where they're like, you are a child. You're giddy,
What's it like
you just
90
gotta-
days to kick off, something like that?
Yes. So it's a big moment. Talk to me a little bit about the role at the NFL. I thought some of the coolest stuff that you were doing there was really globalizing the game. Going to South America, really permeating into Europe. What was the mental shift for you from going, from that global role back into, a massive contributor to the business, but coming back to North America? Was there anything in your thinking about, leadership, approach to business that's different?
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about my role, I have peers around the world for each of our other regions. And ultimately, our P&L comes from the hotel sales. So I have the U.S. and Canada. I have a peer that runs China and APAC and EMEA and CALA. And ultimately, our P&Ls are selling hotels in our region. Then we have a second role, though, which is activating and engaging customers in that part of the world. I want to grow enrollments. I want to make sure they're buying things from us. I want to make sure they're active members, contactable members. I want to drive that flywheel that ultimately creates a long-term health. The tension in the business, which I think is really a fun tension, is Americans don't just go to America. People staying in hotels in Canada aren't just coming from Canada. They're coming from all over the world. And so we call it a source market approach, which is where people live, or a destination, which is where the hotels are. And I say often, people don't live in destinations. Sometimes you do, local business, but you get my broader point. And so it creates this balanced approach where I often will have to work with my partner in Caribbean and Latin America because there's a lot of Americans looking to go to the Caribbean. Or right now with some of the changes and some of the travel restrictions that are happening. By the way, we went a long time with you asking about tariffs, so thank you for that. But by Canadians, as an example, are staying closer to home. They're not coming to the U.S. as much, or they're going to Mexico and the Caribbean. They're flying over the U.S. And by the way, that benefits our company. So it's company first, region second. And I'm backfilling that business in the U.S. with people actually coming from Europe or Americans staying closer to home. So this system enables us to backfill and really see those demand trends, enable us to maximize profitability.
Yeah, that's cool. We thank you for sharing so much about storytelling, about the business setup. I just want to talk a couple minutes about accountability, because the way you shared your role is that it's the P&L, right? So bringing together marketing and sales functions and really all of business gets alignment. How do you create accountability? How have you instituted a framework for measurement, not just for media, but really overall, how the whole operation is driving growth?
Yeah. First, I'm a very linear person, and I obsess over goals so much. Every year, I learned this from one of my mentors and past bosses: have your plan on a page. If you can't articulate your plan on one page, then you need to rethink how you talk about your plan. You should be able to talk about it as an elevator pitch and, with your CEO or whatnot. And a key part of that, it's very simple. I've used the same format for 6 years now. It's your objectives. Those objectives aren't your objectives. Those objectives are actually the company objectives. How they come to life, yes, marketing has a role in those, and sales has a role in those, and pricing has a role in those. And then you lay out sort of like your everyday tactics, your new initiatives in each of those verticals, and you unify at the bottom with KPIs. And those KPIs are business outcomes. Now, channels will often have leading indicators, but you have to keep in mind you are not maximizing for the channel. You're trying to drive the bottom line KPIs. And the reason I design it that those stretch across the bottom is they're not siloed in any one of the verticals. They're actually unified. So like big companies, we've historically had a lot of metrics, too many. Yep. We've recently really focused on 8 that drive the business. And when you get behind those, and this is, I think, the most critical part, you tie people's bonuses to them, all of a sudden you see people motivated to move those KPIs, and you stop debating, is that the right metric or not? And so what's the classic, what gets measured gets done? I think it's what gets measured and bonused gets done.
Yeah, exactly. What motivates to pay your mortgage? Yeah, but it's important. I mean, defining the critical jobs to get done to be successful is at the center of it. All right, we made it 3/4 of the way through, and I'm now going to say AI. Because we
that is a record. We were debating how long it'd take. Go ahead. Go.
But it permeates everything. You know, we're seeing it every day. I think the rise of humans finding tasks for AI to make life simpler. And you have an incredible ecosystem because the portfolio is so big. So, finding ways to have incredible stays and experiences within the Bonvoy environment is easy. But planning travel is hard. When you do it, like if it's just you going on a business trip, easy. But when you put in family and different objectives, how are you thinking about employing AI to engage the consumer, make that experience better? And is there any other kind of, brilliant way that you're thinking about implementing it in the business?
So I'll amend slightly what you said. Travel can be hard. Travel planning can be hard, but damn, it's fun. And it is, I'm the planner for my family, and that's not traditional in most families. It is the female leader of the family or one of the female leaders of the family. But for me, clearly with my job and the like, so in the realm of AI, we're doing a lot. Some I can share, some I can't. But what I can tell you is it goes back to when you're sitting on a lot of really good data, you need to experiment and build intelligence around that. And that can fulfill on better travel experiences. I'll touch on an example in a minute, as well as it can fulfill on back of house efficiencies. So I actually want to start there. We did some things. We work with travel intermediaries, and they're often like, your hotels need to do X, Y, and Z. And so imagine you're getting from one of your partners for 6,000 hotels an assessment, and those assessments, 7 different reports. And the hotels are like, I don't know what to do with this. I have to actually run my hotel. Well, we threw it into Copilot, built an agent, and within 24 hours, we had built an agent that literally a hotel can ask, what can I do to improve X in my business? And from all those reports, it gives them the recommendation. That wasn't like a massive IT project. It was done in a day and immediately deployed and driving value that does what we need the AI to do, which is help our associates take better care for our guests by getting out of mundane tasks that weigh them down. And so that, I think that's a really good example. On the consumer side, we've been doing a lot of experimentation around search, on AI-based search. We actually started this with our Homes and Villas product instead of Marriott, Bonvoy, the app or .com overall, because we wanted to learn. And thank God we did, because what you learn when you deploy things is what gets put into an open search box. Again, remember, travel's usually very linear. It's a very structured search, dates and destination alike. When you just have an open box, you learn a lot about the things people put in there. And some of those things, actually, if we were to recommend hotels associated with those things, that would be a liability to the company. And we simply cannot do that. So we're learning a lot about, and like, none of us saw that coming. And so we're learning a lot about, like, what are the guardrails that you need to put in place to be able to responsibly deploy it. But a company of our size and our scale typically doesn't move fast. We're moving really fast in the experimentation space, which is exciting.
Innovation can be done responsibly. So one more topic, and then I'd love to open it up for a couple questions. Really unique opportunity in the travel space because you have such an intimate relationship. You sleep with your customers.
Or they sleep with us.
They sleep with you. Sorry. I should have said that. That there is your understanding of their behavior, of their lifestyle, can be of incredible value to your partners and to the industry at large. Can you talk just a little bit about how you're responsibly taking that information and creating a travel media network?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. So we've made some big announcements here at Cannes. We have a beautiful hotel just down the street that, if you haven't walked by, is a beautiful backdrop for us to launch what we're calling Riot Media. Riot is derived from Marriott, so it's RIOTT. And if you go back to what I said at the outset, 240 million members, profiles on them, over 200 plus attributes per individual, a connected network of digital assets at scale, in-room televisions that when you enter the room, you don't just enter anymore, you log into the room. So the screen knows who you are, it's connected to your profile. Working with Trade Desk, we're actually extending that capability into programmatic media as well. And so as a marketer, I'm obsessed with this idea of marketing orchestration at the individual level, like personalization at scale. We're all striving to get that. Well, we have it. And what we realized is it's not only valuable to us, but if we invite some select partners into that, it's valuable to them as well. So Riot Media is all about a curated network where partners can access our travelers in relevant ways. And why I say that, and I choose my words very carefully, we're not just opening it up. It's not an open ad network. It will be very, very selective. The content we present should be relevant to our travelers. We want to work with brands that deliver on that. I'll give you an example. We had a few launch partners who happened to be partners of ours already, and we said, we're creating this endeavor. Would you work with us to test out the efficacy of it? PepsiCo is a great example. Gatorade's typically presented as hydration for athletics and the like. Well, when you travel, dehydration is a real thing. And staying hydrated is a real thing. In fact, I stock my hotel rooms now with Gatorade water. And I have found it is the best thing for overcoming jet lag. And I actually asked somebody, I'm like, can you get too many electrolytes? And like, I don't think so. I'm like, all right, because I'm drinking a lot of this.
No OD on electrolytes.
Yeah. But integrations for Gatorade and the tests we did on our screens wasn't just a Gatorade spot. It was tailored content showing up on our television screens when you walked into our rooms around staying hydrated while you travel and the like. So that's good storytelling for them in a highly relevant way. And the last thing I'll say is this. When you think of scale and when you think of publisher scale, in the advertising world, we often look at how big's your audience. If I give you some of the stats in the US, this is the moment when we realize that we're onto something. We have more than 1 million rooms in the US. If you take our average occupancy and think of that as an audience, and that audience is walking into a room where that television is on, if you're like me, you don't turn it off for a while. It loops and loops and loops a bit. Our total viewership on a daily basis would make us a top 6 cable network, just behind ESPN. So just think about that as an asset that we're sitting on. If we can harness that in ways that not only delivers a better experience for our travelers, but also enables our partners to get in front of them, and we monetize at the same time, that's a big win.
It's incredible. Awesome. I could ask you questions all day. Maybe a minute, a couple questions. If anybody in the audience would like to ask Andy something, please go ahead. We'll start up there and then come right down here to the front row.
If it's about a missing stay, I can direct you to the form.
Yeah. Hey, Dan. Hey, Andy. Mark with iSpot. Good to see you both. No, my question is not about a missing stay.
Great.
I like what you said about getting into national parks and getting to nature and the small house and kind of the different experiences, both at that end and then kind of the super yacht, ultra high net worth end. I'd love to hear more maybe about experiences too. If like the concierge has always been a source for experiences, reservations, and dinner and activities. But is there more kind of coming from Marriott and some of those areas around trip planning and those kinds of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we're an experience business, and those experiences don't just happen when you're in our hotels; they happen every day. And so the concierge has long been a local expert of sort. But that also is getting democratized a bit more with digital and the like. And so we're working through, we've had some brands play more aggressively there than others as a proof point. And so we're working through what that looks like. What I'll say also is that the Bonvoy program isn't about singularly delivering hotel experience. It's about creating lifelong experiences that can span your travel as well as your everyday life. So one of the big reasons we work with partners is to create once in a lifetime experiences that get served up through our Marriott Bonvoy Moments program. Anything like, going to the Final Four, getting courtside seats, Super Bowl, F1, all of our sports partnerships around the world create these amazing opportunities for people to showcase their love of sports and get essentially access that they can't get on their own. Something we bridge under this strategy that we want, travel more and more is bridged to, we say it's people, it's passions, it's places. It all gets wrapped together. Sports travel is a big one. Culinary is another huge piece of our experiences business. Music, another huge. Fashion, wellness, all wrapped up in their passions. And I think ultimately people want experiences that tie to their passions. And so you'll see more from us there.
Great. And then one in the crowd here, and then I think we get a wrap. Yeah.
Awesome. I love what you said about feeling and building on experiences. What are you doing in terms of growth in the actual event and experiences space?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because often I'll sit up here and we talk about B2C, but our B2B business is a huge piece of not just the company, but also my job. So we're one of the biggest operators of meetings and events in the world. In the U.S. and Canada, we have I'd say we have the broadest and deepest depth of convention hotels. Something we call our convention and resorts network. Anything from our Gaylord hotels to some of the resorts in Florida and to anywhere on the country, we can deliver not just a meeting, but a proposition that others can't. So, for example, we're working a lot with meeting planners to secure multi-year agreements, because we can create an incentivized structure that enables them to take their big meetings. And anyway, it might be 1,000 people or it could be 20,000 people. And we have the capacity to handle it and also serve them across multiple geographies and with one account team. And so remove friction and make it easier in the sales process, and then deliver an experience that others can. And honestly, we could talk for hours on this because we're doing so much there. And we're reimagining what an event looks like. And that's not just the technology, but that's in the same way that people want experiences in their everyday lives. Let's create an experience of an event. I don't like going to a event that's a typical theater setup anymore. I like the soft seating. I like the couches. I like the high boys in the back. You want varying experiences. Just like we don't all travel the same. We don't have the same needs. Have a meeting that delivers and is personalized for the group. That's all. And so we could talk for hours on that.
So thank you, Andy. It's a great conversation. Encourage everybody to not focus on things, focus on experiences, and go see the world, and hopefully go see the world of the Bonvoy. Andy, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.